They say the best defenders in the world are the ones who never have to make a tackle, that the greatest midfielders are the ones who never have to chase the game because the game comes to them. Well, imagine a player who barely sprints, who covers less ground than almost anyone else on the pitch, who never looks rushed, never looks panicked, never looks like he is even trying, and yet somehow he is the single most important footballer on the entire field. A man who makes an entire Manchester City side breathe in rhythm without ever raising his own heartbeat. A player who wins the ball, dictates the tempo, and slides the perfect pass, all while looking like he is taking a quiet walk through the park on a Sunday morning. That player is Rodri. And before we dive in, if you love breakdowns that go beyond the highlight reels and actually explain why certain players are special, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel more than you know. Here is the strange thing about Rodri. When you first watch him, you barely notice he is there. He does not do the things that make you leap off your sofa. He does not dribble past 5 men. He does not smash 30-yard rockets into the top corner every weekend. He does not make those lung-bursting runs that send a stadium into a frenzy. He just passes. He just positions himself. He just thinks. But take him out of that team and watch the whole structure collapse in front of your eyes. Ask defenders and attackers across world football who the hardest midfielder to play against is, and so many of them land on the same name. Not because he is the most physical, not because he is the fastest, but because by the time you believe you have found a gap through him, the ball is already gone, and he is already 3 moves ahead of you in his head. It is that sense of always being one step ahead that makes him so infuriating to face. He knows when the press is coming before it arrives. He needs only one touch to escape it. He shields the ball like it is glued to him, turns his body in impossibly tight spaces, and reappears somewhere you never expected. And crucially, he scores the goals that actually decide matches. But the thing that truly separates him is his control and his passing. You simply cannot get close to him because he is always one thought ahead of everyone else on the grass. Yet it is easy to forget that there was a time, not so long ago, when people genuinely doubted whether Rodri was good enough for Manchester City, whether Pep Guardiola was being too loyal to a player who did not look explosive enough, dynamic enough, or athletic enough for the brutal pace of the Premier League. Fans wanted more energy, more running, more pressing, more chaos in that midfield. What they failed to understand was that Rodri was never designed for chaos. He was designed to eliminate it. He was shaped in Madrid, coming through the academy at Atletico. And if there is one club on the planet that drills defensive discipline, tactical intelligence, and the ability to read the game before it unfolds, it is Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone. You can still see that upbringing in everything he does today. The positioning, the refusal to be dragged out of shape, the discipline, that is pure Atletico DNA. But a player this gifted was always going to outgrow a single system. After establishing himself in La Liga, Manchester City came calling in the summer of 2019, paying a fee of around £62 million. And at the time, the reaction was lukewarm at best. That much money for a holding midfielder who barely breaks a sweat? People immediately compared him to Fernandinho, the relentless Brazilian who had powered City's engine room for years with sheer aggression and energy. On the surface, Rodri was none of those things. And in that first season, the comparisons were not kind. He made errors. He gave the ball away in dangerous areas. At times, he looked hesitant, like a player wrestling with the demands of English football and the tactical maze of Guardiola's system all at once. Because playing for Pep is not simple, the positional requirements are relentless. You have to be in the right place, not most of the time, but every single time. And early on, Rodri was not always there, but here is what defines him. He learns, he absorbs, he watches, he listens, and he adapts. And slowly, almost invisibly, he began transforming into something extraordinary. Guardiola has coached some of the greatest midfielders the game has ever seen, Xavi, Iniesta, Xabi Alonso, and yet, when asked about Rodri, he said something that made the whole football world pause. He called him the most important player he has ever coached. Not the most talented, not the most gifted, the most important. Because Rodri does not simply play within the team, he is the very foundation the team is built upon. His pass completion numbers sit consistently among the highest of any midfielder in Europe. But it is never just about the percentage. It is the timing and the intelligence of every ball. A switch that unlocks an entire flank. A simple pass sideways that lures the press in and rips open the space behind it. Every touch has a purpose. And then there is his defending, so often forgotten beneath the praise for his passing. Rodri reads danger so early that he rarely needs a crunching challenge. He intercepts passes before they are even played. He quietly strangles passing lanes. He positions himself so that attackers simply run into dead ends. He defends with his mind long before his legs ever get involved. Then came September 2024. Manchester City against Arsenal. Rodri collapsed to the turf clutching his knee, and he did not get back up. And in that instant, every City supporter felt their stomach drop, because deep down, they already knew what it meant. Anterior cruciate ligament, gone in a single, cruel moment, and what followed was painful to watch. City did not fall apart instantly. It happened gradually, agonizingly, like a machine slowly seizing up after losing its most vital part. The structure he provided evaporated. The midfield suddenly looked fragile, easy to press, easy to bypass. It was like watching a world-class orchestra try to perform without a conductor. The talent was all still there, but nobody was holding the rhythm together. City surrendered their grip on the title race, and while there were other factors, nobody inside that club pretended losing Rodri had not derailed everything. But this is what makes him truly special. Any great player can be missed when injured. Not every great player returns from an ACL and looks exactly as he did before. Months of grueling rehabilitation, months of watching his teammates struggle without him, and when he finally came back, it was as if he had never left. Same positioning, same passing, same uncanny ability to see the game 3 seconds ahead of everyone else. Because Rodri's game was never built on the physical gifts that fade with age or injury. He never relied on raw pace or explosive sprints. He relied on his brain, on his reading of the game, and none of that disappears with a damaged knee. If anything, it only sharpens. That is why Rodri at 30 is every bit as good as Rodri at 26. And that is why Rodri at 34 will almost certainly be doing the exact same thing, barely running, controlling everything. And if you needed any final proof, look at what he did on the international stage. At the European Championship in the summer of 2024, Spain arrived with a squad overflowing with brilliance. Lamine Yamal, Nico Williams, Pedri, Dani Olmo. But the man binding it all together in the center was Rodri. Spain swept to the title, playing some of the most beautiful football seen at a major tournament in years. And right at the heart of it, barely breaking stride, was him. He was named player of the tournament, and months later he lifted the Ballon d'Or, football's greatest individual honor, handed not to a striker, not to a winger, but to a holding midfielder who rarely sprints and controls absolutely everything. For many, that was a shock. For anyone who had actually been paying attention, it was the most obvious decision imaginable. Because at the very highest level, football is not about who runs the most. It is about who understands the game most deeply, who sees what others cannot, who controls a match not with their legs, but with their mind. And nobody on the planet does that quite like Rodri. So tell me down in the comments, is Rodri the greatest defensive midfielder of his generation, or is there someone you would take ahead of him? I read every single reply, and if you enjoyed this, drop a like and subscribe, because it truly means the world to me.